think we can all agree that in recent years we've been getting bombarded with live-action remakes, and having watched previous disappointments like Mulan, Snow White, and more recently Lilo and Stitch, my initial reaction to finding out about a new remake is to be heavily skeptical. So hearing that yet another childhood classic, especially one that was already next to perfect, was getting turned into another live-action remake, it was worrying to say the least. Live-action remakes are at their heart just unoriginal and unnecessary, which affect my enjoyment heavily when watching them, so I don't always have high hopes for them. But luckily, How to Train Your Dragon took all my worries and flung them out the window because my goodness did this movie do the original justice. This movie took what we loved about the original film and not only adapted it, but it took the smaller character moments and expanded on them to further drive home the message of the movie, which so many other adaptations fail to do. It was refreshing to see an adaptation that stuck so closely to the original without being afraid to make adjustments, but also not going too far with those changes. It serves as a blueprint for what a proper adaptation should be and what directors in the future should strive for. But what does this movie mean for future adaptations? What did this movie do that makes it stand out among all the other live-action remakes? Going into this movie, I was honestly excited. All the trailers for it showed us that this movie was going to have great visuals and for the most part remain faithful to the animated films. For some of these live-action remakes though, this tends to be the case, and it's usually not enough to save the movie from flopping. But it certainly doesn't hurt to be visually accurate. My main concern was that they would make too big of changes or just miss the message at the heart of the movie completely, but luckily there was something different about this movie. Not only did they do an amazing job with the set design and the costuming for this movie, but the CGI for the dragons looks great. Everything about how this movie looks just brings the world of the animated film into the third dimension, and it is beautiful. From the Isle of Berk to the armor and to those magnificent beards, everything was made with such care for maintaining the look of the original while using practical effects, while also adding its own new flair, and it works wonderfully. Along with that, they tweaked the dragons' designs just enough to make them more plausible and a realistic version of Berk, while still keeping the overall design of each dragon type. But obviously no dragon was more important than Toothless. I think it would have been a big mistake to try and change Toothless by giving him smaller eyes or a more lizard-like appearance to try and capture a more typical image of a dragon, so staying as close as possible to the initial design was absolutely the way to go. Toothless having an almost cat-like appearance is pretty important to the connection that both Hiccup and the audience end up having with Toothless, so giving him big green eyes and fins was the right choice. I think the reason that all of these changes felt right were because Dean DeBlois, I probably messed up how to say his name, the director of the live action, is also the director of the animated film, so it was more of him fixing or editing his own work than someone changing a classic. The fact that he led the team for this remake is almost surely what made this movie so faithful and made with love for the original. Funnily enough, he's also the co-director for the original animated Lilo and Stitch movie, so I guess he was showing Disney how to actually properly adapt a movie. Besides that, I think the cast all did a great job. Some characters may not look exactly the same, but it is an adaptation after all, and they all managed to keep the spirit of their animated counterparts, while giving their own unique performances. But everyone looks incredible and they all fit into the world that they reside in. And I can't praise the cast without giving a shout out to our main three actors, Mason Thames, Nico Parker, and Gerard Butler, who all do a wonderful job in portraying these characters in a slightly more developed way, and it's clear that they all care about the franchise. Of course, this is Gerard's second time playing Stoic, having voiced him in the animated movie, but he does a phenomenal job bringing his character to life, which I'm sure wasn't easy with all the clothes they had him wear as part of the costume. Mason obviously did a great job with the role of Hiccup, and I'm excited to see him become Chief in the later sequels, along with Nico being able to give Astrid a bit more depth and showing her capabilities as a fighter. Everyone clearly watched the originals and put what they love about the movie into their performances, and it really shows. Overall, I think this movie does an amazing job at recreating the original movie's world, but what I was looking for when watching this was to see how well they'd adapt that story that we all fell in love with. The absolute most crucial thing in my mind when it comes to remakes and adaptations is to keep the spirit of the original and to properly explore its themes, which this film does wonderfully. If this movie had tried to ignore the message of the original and just make a half-hearted attempt at recreating the story without any of the nuance, it would have just been another flop. Dean DeBlois obviously understands his own story, so therefore he was able to handle it with the grace needed to properly adapt the original story. Hiccup's story is all about acceptance. All of his life, Hiccup is looked at as weaker for not being a dragon slayer, especially with Stoic the Vast as his father. I mean, when your dad is the guy that's literally punching dragons in the face with his bare fists, you kind of have high expectations on you. Even when he tries to do what everyone wants him to, he can't bring himself to do it. Like he himself says, he's the first Viking in 300 years that wouldn't kill a dragon. Almost everyone sees him as a failure in every sense of the word, and he sees that his father is most of all disappointed. He doesn't see a warrior in Hiccup, but instead a weak, confused, and borderline crazy kid who isn't fit to be a fighter. Everywhere he turns, he doesn't receive acceptance from anyone in his life, and it only serves to bring him down even more. But when he shows empathy to Toothless, when he lets down that wall of hate and spares a dragon, he starts to see that he's been just as guilty of prejudice as the rest of the Vikings. Through his bond with Toothless, we see Hiccup both start to accept dragons as more than beasts, and Toothless starts to accept Hiccup as not an enemy, but a friend. Through each other, they are able to learn to change, and they have a connection that makes each of them even stronger than they would be alone. This movie shows this beautifully, and we're able to really feel the connection between the two, both through Mason Thames' performance and through Toothless himself. Alongside Hiccup, the live action shows us just how much Astrid also puts high expectations on herself, which only makes Hiccup's eventual success seem as a challenge to her being accepted. But when she's able to see the true nature of dragons and Hiccup's true compassionate self, she's able to see his perspective and accept him and the idea of coexisting with dragons. Through Astrid, Hiccup sees that maybe his efforts haven't been for nothing after all, and maybe he could change everyone's minds about dragons. But as expected, the village of Berk is not in fact ready to forgive their mortal enemies and just move on, which we get to see more of through this film. Stoic even makes the terrible mistake of shaming his son for trying to achieve peace between the species, saying that Hiccup is not his son. This only further drives the point to Hiccup that he does not receive any acceptance and that he's not deserving of any, but he knows that he can get the people of Berk to change if they can just see the truth. It's a difficult task that Hiccup has to overcome, but eventually, after seeing the Dragon Riders help Hiccup and Toothless to defeat the Red Death, they're able to see that there truly can be peace between the dragons and the humans. This brings Stoic to a moment of clarity where he finally shows his son that he accepts him, that he loves him, showing that he's proud to have Hiccup as his son. Stoic was able to see the empathy that his son displayed and realize that he was stuck in his old ways because of arrogance and apathy, and he learns from Hiccup and makes an effort to repair the relationship. If this live action had even tried to stray from this theme, maybe making Stoic more sympathetic from the start to not make him seem so rough, or making Hiccup have more disdain towards the people of Berk and his father, I think it would have thrown off the entire point that the film was trying to make in the first place. The fact that Stoic and the people of Berk were so dead set in their ways makes their eventual change of heart all the more impactful. Hiccup was able to push through all the disappointment and anger and hate and prove that he and the dragons were worthy of acceptance, and Stoic and the rest of Berk were able to let go of past judgments and learn to grow. Hatred and prejudice is difficult to let go of, but empathy and acceptance are the key to breaking away those barriers and creating peace, and this movie manages to capture that to a T. The live action builds upon the ideas presented by the original, but not so much that it becomes a different movie, and this balance is what makes this movie work on a thematic level. Despite how much this movie surprised me and how much I enjoyed it, it does have me concerned in regards to what major studios are going to do from here on out. It's clear that a lot of people are tired of soulless remakes, but there are still plenty of people going to see these films in the theater. Snow White did see a drop in the amount of people who actually watched the movie, which seemed to maybe have discouraged Disney a bit. And now with Lilo and Stitch receiving less than positive reviews, I thought maybe studios would try to go back to making original films, but those don't seem to do so well either since they lack the proper marketing. It really does seem that studios like Disney are essentially rejecting animation in order to push these live-action remakes, which is just so sad. Animation already gets treated like a genre of movie, when animation does not just mean kids movie, but with all these remakes, it's like they want you to forget about animation as a medium entirely. It's like these studios just forget how impactful these animated classics are until it's time to rehash them for a little bit of extra cash. Now, with How to Train Your Dragon doing so well, I'm afraid that these studios are getting the wrong idea from this and thinking that remakes are still the way to go. The majority of these films are solely made because if it worked once, then studios think it's gonna work again, but in live action. At the end of the day, trying to be original and actually come up with engaging and new stories is more time consuming than studios would like, and they would rather just rehash their old successes. With more and more remakes getting announced, it seems like studios are falling into this habit of just remaking film after film after film, and it's just sad to see. And the worst part is that it's not even a perfect copy and paste either. It's all flash and no substance. These adaptations just use a glorified summary as a script and don't even try to explore the story's themes, and sometimes just completely contradict them. So not only are new and original projects not being worked on, but now these adaptations are tarnishing the message of the originals and giving new audiences the wrong lesson to learn. No matter how visually appealing a remake is, it's worthless if the original message isn't present and understood by the team behind it. You're essentially scamming moviegoers into watching the same movie again, but this time without everything that was so special about it. Studios don't care about how the audience feels about a project as long as they're making back more money than they put into it. That's all that matters. But when you get a team that cares about the project, that loves the story that they are adapting, and they put their heart and soul into every aspect of it, you can actually make something with some substance. You get something that introduces a new generation to a classic story, but viewed through a different lens, and that's what makes a great adaptation. If you don't have that, then you don't have a movie worth watching, and you alienate your audience. That's the problem with these remakes that I'm glad How to Train Your Dragon avoids, but I hope the same can be said for future remakes to come. The main thing that I think people should take away from this movie is that an adaptation should honor its predecessor. It should never try to outdo what came before it, or change its message in a way that betrays what's trying to be said by the story. It should take what was, build upon it, reinterpret it, and bring their vision for it. It's clear that this movie was made by people who obviously loved the original film. A good portion of the crew probably grew up having watched the movie. By having these passionate people work on a live-action adaptation, you not only get a film that keeps the same spirit of the original, but any fresh ideas are brought by people who understand the material well. So many films nowadays just repeat what was put to the screen less than 10 years prior and call it a day. But then someone comes along and brings a fresh take on a beloved story that brings back what made you resonate with it in the first place. Animated films are still and have always been great pieces of media, and so many great classics have been animated films, and I hope that they can continue to get the recognition that they deserve. But in the cases where one does get adapted into a live-action format, I hope that it can be treated with the same level of respect and care that How to Train Your Dragon received for its story, its themes, and its world. That way, not only is a new audience reach for this beautifully crafted remake, but they can also fall in love with the animated masterpiece that had left such an impact on audiences in the first place. Overall, there's not much to add about this movie. I personally loved it. If you enjoyed the original, you're going to enjoy this movie, and I would recommend watching both the animated film and the live action to anyone who hasn't yet. I give this movie 9 peg legs out of 10, and the animated film 10 peg legs out of 10. I mean, come on, you gotta give it to the original. It's a masterpiece and it still holds up to this day. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel for more videos like it. Your support really would mean a lot to me. If you have any suggestions for other shows, movies, even games that I should talk about, make sure to leave your suggestion in the comments. With that out of the way, I'll catch you all next time.